Good morning, sports fans. This is George with Custom Tied Flies and Guide Service. This morning, boys and girls, we are going to be building the Spuddler. It's a variation of the muddler minnow. It's a great bug for trout and smallmouth and about anything else that eats bait fish and other stuff that swims, crawls, drops into the water. This is a diver and riser, so when you pitch it, you let it sit for a few seconds, give it a little shake, and then when you strip it quick, and it'll go down under the surface, and then it'll pop back up. And when you strip it quick, it throws some water around. The head is real big on it, so excuse me, it moves a lot of water. This is what the finished fly looks like. So without further ado, first of all, we have the hook that I'm using is a Mustad 79-580 in a 4. And typically this hook comes in this is a down eye, but I don't want the eye to be down on this. I want it to be more straight, so I just kind of used my pliers and made it straight, and then pinch the barb down. So the first thing we want to do is we're going to put the lead underbody in it. This is lead 0.025 wire. Of course, you can use lead-free substitute or whatever else you want to use. I like lead. And I put it on my bobbin to make it easier to work with. So put 16 wraps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Use my old scissors I've had for 20 some years, and they're very dull, but they're great for working with wire. I'm going to pull that forward, and I'm going to put those last couple of wraps. All right, and then I want my lead to start, excuse me, here at the point of the hook, okay, and then come up, and then this is where my head's going to go, so I really don't want it interfering with where the head's going to go. So here I'm going to start off with 140 denier Danville Flymaster in brown, and you're going to tie a stopper. You can either tie it in the front or tie it in the back, it doesn't matter. Just get you a stopper, and then bring the thread up over top of the lead, get you another stopper, and bring it back, and you're going to run your thread. Now I like to run it down past the bend. Gives the tail a little more support, I think. Speaking of the tail is brown kip tail or calf tail. Depends on where you're at, I guess. I think they call them kip tails in England. Just trim that off for the tail. And you want to pull the shorties out. See how thick that is. You want to pull those shorties out because you don't need them. There you go. There's the tail ready to go on. You want the tail to be about the hook shank, thereabouts. And just put a couple of loose wraps to kind of control where the hair is. Then you can go with some tighter wraps. You want to be careful that you don't bend the tail around the bend of the hook. You want it to be straight off the back. All right. Then that's the underbody. I'm going to paint that with head cement. I'm going to sit that off to dry. Once it's dry, we're going to put it in the vise. I'm going to get back in with my 140 denier. And I am going to add, it's time for the body. So I'm using cream colored or tan Patent wool. Patent is the brand. I get it at Hobby Lobby. A couple of half hitches here in the front. Bring my bobbin cradle over, and then I'm going to wrap that yarn on. I'm going to be careful that I don't mess my tail up. I'm going to put that off to the side because I'm going to need it again shortly. All right, next is the flash. It is 6 strands of Rootbeer Krystal flash. And I just pull them out and lay them on my leg for now. And notice what I've done here. I didn't explain that. So I got my Krystal flash in a Ziploc bag, and then I cut the corner of the Ziploc bag off, and that way I can keep control of what I got coming out. So I got my 6 strands of Rootbeer Krystal flash. I'm going to even those up best I can. I mean, you know, short of just trimming them off. That's good. I'll fold it over to find the middle. And I grab the middle and I just put it across, fold it over across the thread, bring it over, and then take about a half a securing wrap and use my thumb to push the crystal flash around where I want it so that it's coming kind of down the sides. And then I'm going to trim that off at about 2 shank lengths behind the fly. Next is brown Grizzly hackle. Yeah, I get this from Ewing. Well, actually, this is Whiting American, but I haven't bought from them in a while. I just had this a while. You want to select. You just need 2. You put them together facing each other like you would on a deceiver. And you want that to even up with where the crystal flash is falling. Right in there. And then you just peel that back to expose this quill where you're going to tie them in. And you want to tie them in on top and on opposite sides of the shank. Take a loose wrap to get them where you want them. And then you just kind of, nope, that moved. There we go. We get them tied in. Okay, now you're going to go back to get your body yarn. Once you get them in, put that body yarn back on, and you know what, I found it was better to put it on the bottom, that way it doesn't get in the way. Okay. Next you're going to add squirrel tail. This is from gray squirrel. Just a regular gray squirrel that you get when you're out hunting. Trim that off the tail. Now I gotta remember something. I gotta go back and check. Sometimes you gotta do that. Yeah, alright, I'm not screwing up. Okay, so that goes right on top. Take a couple of loose ones. And you want to just take your thumb and spread that hair around. And then take a couple of tight ones. Now you got to do the same thing on the bottom. I tend to do it in thirds. So I do the top, and then I use a little less to do the sides and then try to push the sides up, because if you put it here, then you got to fool around with the hook. So I put it here on the side, and I can take a wrap, a couple of loose wraps, and I can bring it around where I want it. Okay, and then I can do the same thing on this side. So I did that. Now I'm going to do the same thing over here. Get those shorties pulled out. A couple of loose wraps. Push that down around where I want it. Get it nice and tight now. Okay, and then this up here, you can just trim that off out of your way best you can. That didn't go quite where I wanted it to go. I guess I don't really have a lot of choice in it now. There we go. If you want to square that off, you can use a razor blade. That's what I'm about to do here. And just kind of get those real long ones out of the way. You don't want a bunch of stuff up on the shank where you're going to be trying to spin your hair. And that's the problem I'm trying to avoid here. All right, and here again for extra security, I paint with head cement. And then I got my underbody or my overbody yarn, and I'm going to put that in place. And sometimes it wants to try to go where it wants to go, so you have to, yep, there it got. You got to kind of spin it, put it in place, hold it, spin it, put it in place, hold it. There we go. And you're going to leave that for later. Okay, so now that I got that, I'm going to put that out of the way. Now it's time to spin my hair. I'm going to switch from the 140 denier to the 210 denier. Same color, same manufacturer. So on a hide, on a deer hide, you have, so you know the deer turns colors throughout the year. You know, they get lighter in the summer and they get darker in the fall and in the winter. Excuse me. But of course, also the hair is longer on some parts of the hide than it is on others. So for this particular application, you want to see if you can get your deer body. This is not belly, this is body. Excuse me. You want to see if you can get your deer body right around 1.5 inches, 2 inches. Okay, and then later when you start making the rest of the head, you're going to use a smaller hair length. So you get you a clump about as thick as a pencil or so. Trim it off the hide. You're going to have under fur. So I use a knit comb. I ordered these off of Amazon. Got 5 of them for like $3 or something. And you comb out that under fur. And these really long fibers are sticking out the end. You just pull them out because you don't really need them anyway. And you're going to put this in your hair stacker. And I did there's a tutorial on my YouTube channel about spinning hair. And it's pretty informative, I think. So you give that a few taps. Make sure your tips are lined up good. See how that lined the tips up real nice? Okay. And then you want this to fall right around the back, the top of the bend, somewhere in that general vicinity. You see where the top of the bend is? You want your hair to fall right around in there. Okay, maybe a little shorter. Right in there. All right. Trim that excess off. Is what you're doing is on this part you're making a spacer. You don't want to spin this all the way around yet. Just take a couple of wraps to hold it in place, and then you push it around where you want it, and reef down on it. Let it flare. Okay? And you're going to do the same thing on the bottom. And like I said before, these really long ones you don't need, so you just kind of pull them off. You don't really need them. Get your hair in your hair stacker. You just tap it on your desk or, you know, whatever. Got them nice and evened up. These are going to go on evened up right around the tip, right in there. Take a couple of loose wraps so that you can get them positioned where you want them. Squish them down with your thumb and then reef down on it so that the hair flares. All right. Then you push this back with your fingers. Then if you need to, you can kind of trim this a little bit so that it's pretty even, because this is going to be the guide you're going to use to make sure that your head is shaped right. Because this is where your head's going to go on now. You're going to use, this is where I said you're going to use the shorter fur. Get you a clump about the size of a pencil. Pull those shorties, or the under fur, out. Now this you don't have to put in the stacker. You don't really need the tips lined up. So take a soft wrap, pinch wrap, come around to get it placed, and then on your second wrap, let it go and let it spin. And you keep putting wraps on until it stops moving. There we go. You'll get a feel for it eventually. I mean, your first couple of spun heads are going to look like crap, but you'll get a feel for it eventually. Okay. Another clump about the size of a pencil. Get that under fur out. Same thing, put it on top. Take a couple of soft wraps and then let it spin. And what I'm using here is a brass hair packer. I've had that for a really long time. I mean, people use different stuff for packing hair. When I first started off, I used the body of an ink pen. I just, like a big pen. I pulled the ink well out of it, and that's what I used. But one of the problems I had was that the body of the pen is where the inkwell goes in is square, so it makes it kind of sharp. And if you push in on it too hard, you end up cutting your fur. This natural deer hair tends to be a little brittle. I might be able to get one more clump on there. Yeah, I'll get one more. Not a big one, but a little one. You just got to push that back far enough that you can get your thread in there and get a tie off. And I'm going to use a 5 3 whip here. Put a little dollop of head cement on it. And this is ready for the steamer. Now, I use a kettle. So here you got this one. See how it's all scraggly? All right. I'm going to set that off to the side because I'm going to put it in the steamer. This one's been to the street. This one's been in the steamer. See how it's all full and, good looking. This one's not been in the steamer. See, it's how flat. It's not puffed out. So, next is the trim. So, before you start trimming, you have to find that spacer you put in. See it right there? All right. So you want to hold these fibers back, and then you kind of line your trimming scissors up from the eye to that spacer and give it a chop. And there, that sets up. You just follow that path around to get the majority of the hair out of the way, and then you can put the finishing touches on with a razor blade. Let me see if I can, that way you can see. I want to also call attention to the fact that I'm not using good scissors for this. I'm using sharp scissors, but I get these spring-loaded scissors at the Army surplus store. You know, they're like 50 cents a pair or something. They work great. They're nice and sharp. Because deer hair is very abrasive. And it'll mess a pair of scissors up something fierce, let me tell you. You just keep working the head to get it into shape. You're sculpting, you know, like Michelangelo. You just trim away everything that doesn't look like a muddler head. Now, if you're wondering how big you should make your head, you can judge it again the gap here. You don't want your head to be so big that it overshadows the gap, because when the fish grabs it, all he'll get is head. And then, you know, it doesn't do you any good. So you want to get the hair trimmed down to where the head, at least on the bottom, is just a little smaller than the gap. Then you go to your little blade. So I use a razor blade. You get them by the pack at Walmart. And just shape. shaping these, you can't just take a, you got to shape them a little bit at a time. You can't just take a great big hunk. Because if you take a great big hunk and it's wrong, then you just ruined your head. Okay, so like I said, you just keep shaping a little bit at a time. You just kind of got to eyeball it. Now there are some tools out there. There's one guy that I think he stole his wife's eyelash curler and fixed it up so that he could put a soft blade like this in it. That was a pretty ingenious idea. I think another guy used a dubbing twister and just kind of put the spring-loaded hooks of the dubbing twister in the blade. I like to do it like this. It's a little more off the bottom. And there you go, the Spuddler. So I want to thank you for taking the time to join us this morning. This is George with Custom Tied Flies and Guide Service. You can find me, you can find the Custom Tied Fly Shop on Facebook at Custom Tire 02. That's CUSTOMTYER 02. And you can find the website at custom-tied.com. That's CUSTOM-TIED.com. Have a splash. Don't forget the dash. And if you enjoyed this and you found it helpful, please like and subscribe. And we'll see if we don't see you again. So, happy tying.